Rain hung low over the pines, heavy and cold, dripping in long threads from the needles. The forest smelled of iron and wet bark. Moss swallowed each step Erin took, muting the sound until it felt like the world itself was holding its breath. She moved with the caution of someone who knew how the earth could betray her, testing each patch of ground with the heel of her foot, shifting her weight, slow and balanced. Behind her, Lainey copied the motion, small breaths puffing clouds into the cool air, her hand reaching every so often for the hem of her mother's cloak. The glint came too late. A circle of metal, slick and unnatural among the roots. Too round to be stone, too smooth to be wood. By the time Erin's mind caught it, the black ring snapped up from the moss. Steel thorns punched into her ankle. The tire clamp bit hard, bone against iron, and her knee buckled. She hit the ground with a sound she would not call a scream, forcing her breath into a hiss between clenched teeth. Pain surged sharp and high, stabbing up her calf until it rattled her gut. Lainey dropped beside her, knees in the mud. "Mom!" Her small hands hovered, useless and shaking, terrified to touch, terrified not to. Erin's vision blurred red around the edges, but she gripped the tire rim, tried to wrench it open. The trap did not budge. The thorns were turned inward, forged from cut nails filed to cruel points. Blood welled hot and fast, turning the earth beneath her foot to purple muck. She pulled once more, jaw locked, and stopped before the spikes could tear further. Lainey's voice broke sharp through the rain. "Help, human! Help my mom, her foot hurts." The cry echoed against the trunks, raw and desperate, carrying farther than any whistle. Erin wanted to silence her, but the sound was already gone, out into the world. Branches stirred. A man stepped from the understory, canvas jacket dark with rain, a pack worn pale at the seams. Black hair cropped short, eyes calm and watchful. He raised both hands, palms open, showing no weapon, no threat. His voice carried low and steady through the rain. "I heard the call. I'm Darius. I'm going to look. No sudden moves. Don't talk," Erin snapped, her breath clipped, pride cutting sharper than pain. He nodded once, accepting her command. He crouched beside the trap, balanced on the balls at his feet, and studied the cruel geometry without touching. His gaze traced the staggered thorns, the split rim hinge, the bent spoke lever, locked under tension. Each part mapped in his mind before a hand moved. Lainey edged in front of her mother, chin lifted, teeth bared in a child's defiance. "If you hurt her, I'll bite you. That's fair," Darius said, no mockery in his tone. He pointed gently to a spot by his shoulder. "Stand here so you can see what I'm doing." She hesitated, then obeyed, placing herself exactly where he asked. Darius set his pack down. He pulled out a pry bar, a folded belt, a rag already damp with rain. He wiped his hands clean. His movements were deliberate, controlled, every angle measured. He slid the belt inch by inch between steel and skin, building a barrier against the spikes. The rubber groaned, biting back. Erin watched him with narrowed eyes, suspicion fighting gratitude. "You want to thrash?" He asked. "Don't." Her voice was steel through pain. "If I need to scream, I won't." "Good," he said quietly. "Then breathe." Lainey watched with wide eyes, lips tight, her small fingers clenched and unclenched, itching to help, to fight. The rain pattered harder against the canopy, dripping down onto the moss where her mother bled. Darius's hand stayed steady. He was no scavenger, no careless man who set traps and left bodies. He moved like someone who had broken these machines before, not to kill, but to free. Erin's breath came slow, measured through grit teeth. She hated that she needed him, hated more that his calm gave her strength. Lainey, sharp and fierce, looked from her mother's pale face to the stranger's careful hands. For the first time in her short life, she realized not every man who came from the woods meant harm. Some came with open palms. The trap held. The pain bit. But in that moment, something else clicked open, something that would not shut again. The rain thinned by morning, though the forest still dripped, every branch shedding slow drops that pattered into the moss. Erin lay propped against a root, her ankle bound in a strip of cloth dark with blood. She had refused to faint, refused to close her eyes, though the effort hollowed her face. Lainey had not moved from her side, her hand wrapped around her mother's wrist, as if holding her there by force of will. Darius crouched near them, sleeves rolled, the pry bar still across his knees. He had not tried to touch Erin again after setting the bandage. He only watched the color in her foot, the way the pulse beat under the skin, the things that mattered most when life was leaking away, drop by drop. His calm made Lainey nervous. He did not fuss, did not whisper comfort, did not lie. He simply studied, waiting for what came next. "Why haven't you left?" Erin's voice rasped, low with exhaustion. "Your work is done. Go." Darius didn't answer immediately. He set his pack aside, pulled a canteen free, and poured water into a shallow tin cup. He offered it to her without meeting her eyes. "Drink. Blood loss steals faster than thirst." She took it, mostly because Lainey's eyes were begging her to. The water stung her throat. When she lowered the cup, Darius finally spoke. "You can't walk on that. Not yet. And if you stay in the open, scavengers will find you before night. You know that." Erin narrowed her gaze, suspicion flaring. "And you expect me to trust you? A stranger in the woods with tools for traps?" "I break them," Darius said simply. His eyes lifted to hers, steady as stone. "Not set them." Lainey shifted closer to him, her small hand tugging at the edge of his sleeve. "You can carry her, can't you? You said you would." Erin turned sharply toward her daughter, ready to cut the words short, but the child's face was fierce. The girl was not asking. She was demanding on her mother's behalf. Erin swallowed the protest that rose in her throat. Darius stood in a single fluid motion, slinging his pack over one shoulder. He crouched again, sliding one arm under Erin's knees, the other behind her back. She stiffened, teeth clenched, every muscle prepared to resist. He didn't force her. He waited until her hand, trembling but steady, gripped his collar. Then he lifted her weight, settled into him with surprising ease. She braced for the jolt of pride collapsing, but instead she felt balance. His stride did not lurch or stumble. He moved as though he had carried wounded bodies before, countless times, each one mattering. Lainey darted ahead, small feet finding the path, eyes sharp for roots and rocks. "This way," she called, eager to lead. The forest closed in tighter as they moved. Rain dripped from leaves. The smell of wet iron clung to Erin's ankle. She pressed her face against Darius's shoulder without meaning to, hiding the hiss of pain when he shifted his grip. "Don't mistake this for weakness," she muttered, her breath warm against the coarse canvas of his jacket. "I don't," he replied. His tone carried no pity, no judgment. Only fact. By the time they reached the hut, the light was draining from the sky, pale gray sliding toward dusk. The structure was small, half hidden under the trees, roof sagging but solid, a thread of smoke curling weakly from the chimney. Darius shouldered the door open with a boot. Inside, it was spare but orderly. A bed, a crate for a table, a stove no bigger than a box, tools stacked in clean rows. Erin felt the shift in the air the moment the door shut behind them. The forest and its traps stayed outside. Here, even in poverty, there was a boundary. Darius lowered her onto the bed. The coarse blanket scratched her skin, but it was dry, and the relief of being set down was almost unbearable. Lainey hovered close, pressing her hand against Aaron's. "I need light," Darius said. He moved quickly, coaxing a flame from damp kindling. When the fire caught, shadows leapt against the walls. He washed his hands in a basin with rough soap, scrubbing until his skin shone raw. Aaron's eyes followed his movements, wary, unwilling to admit she found comfort in their precision. "You move like a soldier," she said at last. "I used to scout," he answered. His hands kept working, checking bandages, preparing hot water, laying out cloths. "Now I keep lists." Aaron's lips curled faintly, though pain still tightened her brow. "Then list us." "One woman, one child, one ruined ankle." He glanced at her, then back to the task. "Noted." Lainey settled at the edge of the bed, leaning her head against Aaron's arm. "He'll fix you," she whispered, her voice small but certain. Aaron didn't answer. Her eyes stayed on the man by the stove, the ex-scout who had stepped from the understory when no one else would, who had caught her when she fell. She did not trust him. Not yet. But for the first time in years, she wasn't sure she needed to run. The rain began again outside, soft against the roof, steady as a heartbeat. The rain deepened as night pressed against the small hut. The sound of water spilling from the eaves, a steady rhythm that filled the silence. Smoke from the stove wound through the air, carrying the earthy scent of boiled varan root. Aaron lay on the bed, ankle raised on folded cloth, the coarse blanket pulled up to her waist. Every throb of pain was a reminder of her mistake, but the warmth of the fire dulled its edge. She hated how much comfort she found in it. Lainey sat close, her hands cupped around a bowl of broth, blowing steam from its surface the way she had seen others do in the settlement. The bowl looked too large for her small fingers, but she held it with pride, sipping carefully. Her eyes kept darting to the man by the stove. He moved with an ease that made her uneasy, every gesture measured, every tool set back in its place, as if he were still reporting to someone who demanded discipline. Aaron broke the silence, her voice rough. "This is your house?" "It's a roof," Darius answered without looking up. "A bed, a door that shuts." Aaron's gaze narrowed. "Doors shut on us." "Not for us." His eyes flicked to hers then, sharp and unreadable. "For you." "For her." He nodded toward Lainey, who pretended not to hear but straightened in her seat. Chin high, the words landed heavier than Aaron wanted them to. She drew his coarse canvas shirt tighter around her shoulders, unwilling to admit the warmth of it settled into her skin. She studied him with suspicion, searching for the hook. Men always wanted something. The sound came, then a faint metallic creak carried through the rain. Darius froze, shoulders tightening. He set the ladle down, crossed to the door, and eased it open with a pry bar in hand. A sliver of wet night slipped through. Aaron pushed herself up on her elbows, heart stuttering. She expected scavengers, another cruel machine, something with teeth. Darius crouched low, lantern light spilling just far enough to catch the shape sunk into mud not 5 steps from the threshold. A second tire trap, half hidden by runoff, its black rim flexed under the storm's weight, armed and waiting. He looked back at her, the question sharp in his eyes. "That one wasn't mine," he said. Aaron met his gaze without flinching. "It was mine." The air in the hut tightened. Lainey blinked between them, confusion flashing across her face. Aaron's voice dropped to a whisper, as if confession itself could bend the walls inward. "To catch the kind of men who drag women by the hair and call it rescue. We were going to move it." For a long moment, Darius said nothing. The rain filled the silence, louder, harder. His eyes studied her, and she braced for the judgment, the anger, the inevitable demand. It didn't come. Instead, he nodded once, as though marking a hazard on a map. "Then we'll disarm it." When the rain breaks, Aaron exhaled sharply, surprise loosening something she hadn't realized she'd held tight. She had expected blame, mockery, questions. Instead, she found only fact. Trust, she realized, wasn't given. It was tested. He shut the door, slid the pry bar aside, and returned to the stove. The hut warmed again, as if the storm outside no longer pressed so close. Lainey climbed onto the bed, pressing her cheek against Aaron's arm. "Does this make you mad?" she asked Darius, her small voice hesitant. "It makes me careful," he replied. His tone was even, not harsh. Careful is how people stay alive. Aaron's throat tightened. She had spent years teaching her daughter to be wary of every hand offered, every glance from strangers. But the girl leaned into this man's air, as though it carried the weight of law. Darius set a comb and a small tin of leaf oil on the great table. He looked to Aaron, not to cause headaches. "May I?" Her pride flared, her instinct to resist sharper than the ache in her ankle. Yet something in his steady gaze, no hunger, no demand, only patience softened her. She turned her head and let her long white hair fall forward. He worked from the ends up, easing snarls without tearing, the comb clicking gently in the quiet. Lainey, tongue caught between her teeth, copied with her own tangled hair, clumsy but determined. Aaron's voice was low when it came. "Are we on your list now?" "You were on it when I heard the child," he said simply. Lainey perked up. "What does the list say?" Darius kept combing. "Feed them. Stop the bleeding. Fix the traps. Keep the door." "Keep the door," Lainey repeated, tasting the words like they were a sweet. Her eyes shone as she looked to her mother. "We can stay tonight, right?" Aaron's pride wrestled with the throb in her ankle, with the warmth of the fire, with the weight of her daughter leaning close. She closed her eyes, exhaled slow. "We stay until I can walk." Darius set the comb aside, finished with the last knot, and rested his hand at the base of her neck for a single heartbeat, warm, steady, before pulling away. "Good," he said quietly. "You'll sleep." Aaron lay back, watching him as he checked the bandage again, as he set a clean cup of water within reach, as he took first watch by the door with the pry bar across his lap. His movements were efficient, disciplined, not showy. He was not the kind of man she had built traps for. And as rain softened against the roof, she realized she did not need to thank him. He had not asked for it. Morning slid pale through the cracks in the hut. The rain eased to mist, each droplet catching in the shafts of light that cut across the floorboards. Aaron woke to the rasp of steel on wood. She pushed herself up carefully, ankle bound tight, and saw Darius at the crate table with his knife in hand. Shavings curled away in soft spirals, landing in a neat pile. His sleeves were rolled, his forearms taut but steady, movements patient. Lainey stirred beside the stove, rubbing her eyes with small fists. She blinked, then caught sight of him. "What are you making?" she asked, voice still thick with sleep. Darius held up the length of reed stock, half carved. "A whistle." "For you." Lainey's eyes widened. "A toy?" "Not a toy," he said, shaving another curl with precision. "A tool. Better you learn to call out in sound than lose your voice in the trees." Aaron shifted upright on the bed, suspicion still clinging like smoke. And who would answer her whistle? Her tone was sharp, defensive, as though daring him to lie. Darius glanced up, his gaze level. "I would." The answer struck harder than she wanted it to. Her chest tightened, and she looked away, pretending to adjust the blanket. Words were easy, promises cheaper still. But there was something in his tone, quiet certainty, not performance, that left her unsettled. Lainey edged closer to the table, hovering like a bird eager to see a nest built. Darius guided her small hands to hold the reed steady while he carved the mouthpiece. "Keep it firm, not too tight," he instructed. "If it slips, the cut goes wrong." She nodded fiercely. jaw clenched in concentration. The knife whispered against the wood, and when he finally drew the blade back, the whistle gleamed pale and smooth. He set it to his lips, blew softly. A sharp, clear note cut through the air, startling Lainey into a delighted laugh. "My turn," she cried, snatching it up. She blew with all her strength, the sound too loud, shrill enough to make Aaron flinch. Darius gently lowered her hands. "Not like that." Breath, not shouting. The forest swallow shouting. Again. She tried, softer this time, and the whistle sang, thin but steady. Her face lit up as though she had found treasure. She clutched it to her chest. Proud Aaron watched from the bed, her heart torn in two directions. She had built her life on suspicion, teaching Lainey to bite before being bitten. Yet here was her daughter, learning patience from a man's hands, learning that not every promise hid a price. It rattled Aaron's defenses more than the pain in her leg ever could. Darius cleaned his knife, set it aside, and moved back to check Aaron's bandage. His hands were steady, warm from the fire, precise as he unwound the cloth. The wound was raw but cleaner, the bleeding slowed. He poured warm water, rinsing without a flinch at her sharp intake of breath. "You treat wounds like a medic," she muttered, jaw tight. "Scouts don't live long if they can't patch themselves," he said. His tone was blunt, but there was weight behind it. He'd patched more than just himself. She could see it in the way his eyes lingered, as if measuring lives lost. Lainey crawled up onto the bed, whistle hanging from a cord around her neck. She leaned against her mother, whispering with sudden seriousness, "If I call, he'll always hear me." "Right?" Aaron's throat tightened. She wanted to deny it, to shield the girl from false hope. But Darius answered before she could. "Always." The word filled the small hut like another kind of fire. Lainey smiled, satisfied, and curled close. The whistle still clutched in her fist. Aaron held her daughter's thin shoulders, staring across the room at the man who had carved more than a tool. He had carved his place into their lives without force, without demand. And that frightened her more than the traps in the woods ever had. By the third morning the rain had broken, leaving the forest washed clean and sharp with the scent of pine. Mist still clung in hollows, drifting like breath across the ground. Aaron managed to stand with the crude crutch Darius had shaped for her, each step a bite of pain that she swallowed down. Lainey danced circles around her, blowing soft notes on the whistle, until Darius's stern look silenced her into giggles. For a moment, the clearing felt almost safe. That illusion cracked when they reached the settlement. The cluster of shacks and pylons at the forest's edge looked no better than ruin from a distance. But inside the narrow lanes, people gathered, trading rootstock and bent nails as though scraps could buy safety. Eyes followed Aaron immediately, the pale-skinned alien mother leaning on a crutch, her daughter at her side, and a human stranger carrying a pack too orderly, too well-kept to belong to a drifter. Whispers trailed after them like smoke. Lainey pressed closer to Aaron, her small hand gripping the hem of the canvas shirt she still wore. Aaron tilted her chin high, refusing to bow to their stares. Darius walked beside them, face calm, gaze fixed straight ahead, as though the attention did not exist. But Aaron felt the weight of it, the suspicion curling sharp at the edges. Near the supply post, a petty official stepped into their path. His vest was patched, his boots mud-caked, but the badge on his chest glinted with enough authority to draw a hush from the crowd. He looked Aaron over slowly, then Darius. "You harboring strays now, Scout?" His tone was slick with disdain. Aaron's pride flared hotter than the pain in her ankle. She opened her mouth to answer, but Darius spoke first, voice even. "I'm not a scout anymore," the official smirked. "Could have fooled me. Bringing in off-world women and their brats' dangerous company. Settlement doesn't take kindly to mouths it can't feed. Erin's jaw tightened. She leaned harder on her crutch, pushing past Darius before he could speak. Her voice cut sharp across the silence. I feed my own? I don't need your scraps. The crowd stirred, some snickering, some watching with sudden respect. The official's smirk faltered, but his eyes narrowed. Sharp tongue. Don't cut yourself with it. Before Erin could fire back, Lainey stepped forward, chin lifted, whistle clutched in her fist. She doesn't need you. We already have someone who listens. Her small voice carried, stronger than it had ever been in the woods. Darius's eyes flicked down at her, and back to the official. He said nothing, but the steadiness in his stance was louder than any words. The man spat into the mud, muttered about wasted effort, and stalked off. The crowd dispersed, whispers fading into the drone of daily trade. Erin's chest heaved, her pride sharpened into something fiercer protection, not defiance. She looked at Darius, expecting censure, but found only calm. He had let her speak, let Lainey speak. He hadn't taken the voice from them. That unsettled her more than if he had. They returned to the hut before dusk, silence trailing behind them. At the edge of the clearing, Darius paused. His shoulders tightened, head turning toward the trees. Erin felt it too, a sense of eyes where none should be. Lainey's whistle shrilled suddenly, sharp and clear. She had lifted it without asking, breath strong, sound piercing the mist. From the brush, two shapes lurched into view. Scavengers, mud to their waists, tools like broken claws in their hands. The same kind of men who set traps for ankles and throats alike. Darius didn't draw a blade. He stepped forward, pry-bar in hand, stance low and balanced. His voice was iron. This is marked ground. You know what that means. The scavengers hesitated, eyes flicking from the whistle in the girl's hand to the man who didn't flinch. For a moment, Erin thought blood would spill across the clearing. Instead, one cursed, spat into the dirt, and they melted back into the trees. Silence rushed in after them, thick and heavy. Erin's heart hammered. Lainey lowered the whistle slowly, her hand shaking, but her eyes bright with pride. You see? She whispered to her mother. He heard me. Erin pulled her close, throat tight. She looked at Darius across the clearing, his silhouette dark against the mist. He hadn't raised the pry bar, hadn't struck, but he had held the line. Careful, controlled, alive. For the first time since the trap's teeth had closed on her ankle, Erin wondered if the man she had once thought a danger might be the only reason she and her daughter still breathed. The days after the confrontation with the scavengers hung heavy with unease. The hut was warm and orderly. The bandage around Erin's ankle stayed clean, and Lainey's laughter filled the small space like sunlight. Yet outside, the forest whispered of dangers that had not gone far. Darius moved with more vigilance, sharpening his knife in long, even strokes by the door each night. Erin watched him in the firelight, trying to decide if the sound comforted her or warned her. When the summons from the settlement came, it was no surprise. A runner-a-boy barely older than Lainey arrived at dusk, eyes wide, holding a note stiff with official script. Attend the council at first light. Bring the woman and child. Darius folded the paper once, twice, and set it on the crate without comment. At dawn, they went. Erin leaned on her crutch, her ankle throbbing with every step, but she refused to be carried. Lainey walked between them, small hand clutching her mother's sleeve, whistle bouncing on its cord. The settlement council chamber was nothing more than a converted storehouse. Beams sagging, walls patched with scrap metal. Inside, 3 officials sat at a table, their faces lined with suspicion. The one in the center leaned forward, fingers tapping the wood. You've brought outsiders into our midst, Darius. A dangerous alien woman and her child. Why? Erin's pride bristled, her shoulders straightening despite the pain. She opened her mouth, but Darius spoke first, voice calm. "Because I heard her call," the man snorted. Not an answer. His gaze flicked to Erin. "You, what are you to him? Why should we allow you to stay?" "We have mouths enough." The weight of eyes pressed down. Erin felt the old instinct: silence, obedience, survival through submission. But Laney's hand tightened on hers, small and fierce. Erin lifted her chin. "I'm not yours to allow or deny. I feed my child. I fought traps you left to rot in the ground. I don't ask for charity." A ripple of shock moved through the room. No one spoke to the council that way. The official's lips curled. Strong words for a crippled stranger. The settlement offers safety, shelter, food, but only if you come without him. He gestured at Darius as if brushing him aside. A soldier turned ghost has no place here. Erin's pulse hammered. They wanted to cut him from them, to split the fragile bond that had formed in rain and firelight. She looked at Darius, expecting him to argue, to demand, to lay claim. But his face was calm, unreadable, eyes only on her. He wasn't going to decide for her. The silence stretched, heavy as iron. Then Erin spoke, each word deliberate. "We stay where we choose. And I choose not to be divided." Laney's voice cut through like a blade, high and unflinching. "He's my father now." The room froze. The officials shifted, uncertain, their authority shaken by the certainty in a child's voice. Erin felt the words land like a weight in her chest. She should have corrected them, drawn back, protected her pride. But instead she found herself nodding, the truth undeniable. The council dismissed them with tight lips and bitter eyes, but no chains, no guards. Outside, the air was sharp, the pine-scented wind cutting through the tension. Erin leaned on her crutch, breath unsteady. She turned to Darius. "And what do you want for it?" "For us?" His eyes met hers, steady. "A house that isn't silent. A meal without shouting." The simplicity of it rattled her more than any demand. Her throat tightened as she pulled his shirt tighter around her shoulders, hiding the strange heat rising there. For years, survival had meant suspicion, traps, and silence. Now, for the first time, survival looked like choice. That night, in the hut, as Laney curled beside the stove with her whistle clutched in her hand, Erin let herself lean against Darius's shoulder. Not in surrender. In decision. They would not be taken. They would not be divided. And when dawn came, she knew she no longer feared the forest traps. The only test left was the one she had already passed, choosing to stay. The morning broke sharp and clear, sunlight slicing through the mist like blades of gold. The forest smelled of damp soil and pine, the air clean after days of rain. Erin leaned on her crutch at the threshold of the hut, ankle still bound, but stronger now, able to bear weight without trembling. Beside her, Laney darted from stump to stone, her whistle swinging on its cord, a bright note here and there, puncturing the silence like bird song. Darius emerged carrying the old trap under one arm. The black rubber and steel teeth glistened wet, cruel even in daylight. Erin's breath caught at the sight of it. The memory of those spikes in her ankle, the taste of blood and moss in her mouth, flared hot in her chest. She wanted to turn away, but she didn't. She watched. "We end this," Darius said simply. His voice carried no ceremony, no judgment. Just fact. They moved into the clearing where the earth was soft. Darius set the trap down, half sunk in mud, its rust and filth a relic of the collapse. Laney crouched beside it, frowning. "It looks like it's waiting," she whispered. Erin's throat tightened. "It always waits." Together, they dug. Darius used his pry bar, levering stone from soil. Erin knelt despite the pain, clawing with her hands until dirt packed under her nails. Lainey followed their motions, small fists moving mud, determined to add her strength. The work was slow, deliberate, a rhythm of shared effort. Each scrape of metal against stone, each fistful of dirt, felt like tearing away the shadow that had hung over them. At last they lowered the trap into the hole. It lay there, black teeth bared, silent. Erin stared down at it, her chest heaving. She remembered the moment it had snapped shut, the hiss she'd forced through her teeth instead of a scream, the terror in Lainey's eyes. And she remembered the man who had stepped from the trees with his hands raised, her palm pressed flat against the soil. "It won't take me again," she whispered. Lainey echoed her, voice small but certain. "It can't hurt you anymore." Darius drove the stone slab over it, sealing the teeth in darkness. They packed soil until the earth was smooth, then marked it with a stake. No ceremony, just a scar in the ground, honest and visible. When they returned to the hut, the space no longer felt temporary. Darius added another chair by the table, his movements quiet but deliberate, as though marking the hut for 3 instead of 1. Erin eased onto the bed, her daughter curled against her side, and Darius set a cup of water beside her before taking his place by the door. Later, when Lainey had fallen asleep, whistle clutched in her hand, Erin spoke softly into the quiet. "You could have left us in the forest. No one would have cared." "Why didn't you?" Darius didn't hesitate. "Because I wanted more than silence." Her breath caught, the answer rattling her more than the pain in her ankle ever had. She leaned toward him, and when he bent to kiss her, it was slow, deliberate, a promise rather than a claim. His hand cupped her face, hers pressed against his chest, feeling the steady beat beneath. Lainey stirred in her sleep, mumbling one word into the warm air. "Father." Erin's eyes filled, fear and hope clashing sharp inside her. She looked at Darius, waiting. He gave a single nod, steady. "Yes," he said softly. "You can." Erin leaned into him then, no longer ashamed of need, no longer afraid of staying. The trap that once sought to break her had instead bound them together. The fire burned low, steady and warm. The hut was no longer a refuge for one ghost, but a home for 3. And outside, the forest once filled with teeth stood quiet, no longer waiting to devour, but bearing witness to something born from pain and choice.